he was saying he'd love to have his third MVP here. But with that being said, Max, there's this other guy in the AFC who has only one loss. You've heard of him, Patrick Mahomes. Who is the MVP right now between those two? Is it Rodgers or is it Mahomes?
Right now, if the MVP had to be handed out right now, it would have to go to Aaron Rodgers. And I've been on this show saying, I said before, the first time I saw Patrick Mahomes throw in the preseason, I came on the show and said, I'm going to tell my grandkids about this. It looked like Brett Favre with the arm talent, and except that he doesn't make the mistakes Favre makes. And then I went on to say, okay, this is the best quarterback I've ever seen. I thought Aaron Rodgers was, Mahomes is. Every year I think Mahomes is going to win the MVP. All those things are true. But I never thought Mahomes at his best is that much better than Aaron Rodgers at Rodgers' best. I thought if I had to choose, I'd take Mahomes by a hair, and it looked as though Rodgers was no longer at his best. I know he was in a new system. I get it with LaFleur, and they won 13 games, but he didn't look the same. He looked like more of a game manager. But it turns out now in the second year of the system, Aaron Rodgers is very comfortable, and he hasn't missed a beat, and he's having one of his greatest seasons. And though he has targets and he has a running game, and his defense seems like it's good enough, and he is protected behind the line of scrimmage, all those things are true. He does not have the embarrassment of riches on offense that Patrick Mahomes has. So at this moment, given the fact that Aaron Rodgers at this moment has more touchdowns, fewer interceptions than Mahomes, a higher QBR, a higher completion percentage, and yeah, he has two more losses because, again, he doesn't have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and like a million other receivers and backs, right? He's not on the highest flying offense of all time. There is not, as Bill James once said when comparing all-time great pitchers, there's not a dime's worth of difference between these two this season. But at this moment, my nickel goes to Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Max, you know what? We're going to take a quick break here. We're dealing with some technical difficulties with Lewis and Stephen A. We will come right back and we will revisit the subject. And I've got some questions about the Steelers coming up as well, plus plenty NBA. First Take just getting started. Don't go anywhere. It's a snowstorm. Bear with us, everybody. All right, welcome back into First Take. Let's pick up where we left off. Good to have you back with us, Stephen A. and Lewis. Both can hear me now, and we are ready to go. So here's the deal. We heard Aaron Rodgers. He was asked about MVP. He said he would love to win his third MVP, talked about what it entailed. I asked Max, who is the MVP right now between Rodgers and Mahomes? And he said, it's that bad man, Stephen A. So I'm going to assume you're also going to say it's Aaron Rodgers, right?
Well, I'm not going to say it's Aaron Rodgers now. I still think Aaron Rodgers could win the league MVP, but based on the way that they're both playing, let's take into consideration Aaron Rodgers has had 5 300-plus yard games. Patrick Mahomes has had 9, including two 400-yard games, and one of them was for 462 yards passing, completing 75% of his passes against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that blitzed Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay Packers. If you recall, not only did Green Bay get annihilated 38-10 that game, but Aaron Rodgers completed about 47% of his passes. He wasn't impressive at all. That was a really, really bad night after they started the season 4-0. So when you take that into account, along with the better record, I look at Patrick Mahomes right now being in the lead. I understand that he didn't look that great last week, but he never had as bad of an afternoon as Aaron Rodgers had that one week against Tampa Bay. A matter of fact, the only loss on Kansas City's record was when they gave up 40 to the Las Vegas Raiders, but I think they scored about 33 that game. So I look at it from that standpoint, understanding the plethora of weapons that Patrick Mahomes has had available to him, which is something that I've always brought up, which is something that I think should be taken into consideration when all is said and done. It's just that right now, at this particular moment in time, I think that if you had to vote for league MVP, Patrick Mahomes would probably get it.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Look, I think we know my history as far as how I feel about Patrick Mahomes, and I think one of the things that he doesn't get enough credit for when you're talking about upper echelon quarterbacks is really how much he is in control of this offense now, and you're from a pre-snap standpoint. And I think because of the lack of crowd noise and because of the lack of fans being in stadiums, you're able to hear that, and they pick that up on the audio a lot more now with him in particular. And you see, as he alluded to this past offseason, I didn't even know defenses the way I do now. I'm really just scratching the surface of what's going on as far as my maturation process. And you're seeing now that, coupled with the fact that he is an MVP caliber talent from a pure physical perspective, pre-snap is starting to approach. I'm not saying he's at the level of guys like Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, but he's starting to approach that type of mastery of the position, which I think, coupled with his natural athletic ability and the weapons he has around him, makes him an absolute, like every year, the favorite to be the MVP for the foreseeable future, despite the fact that his numbers may not be blowing away everyone else's. And that's not to take away anything from Aaron Rodgers, who you could tell early on this season, despite him saying, hey, look, I am going to help Jordan Love out as much as I can, relative to what I need to do myself here to get us to play winning football. But make no mistake about it, this is a guy who is on a mission. He is a guy who has a lot to prove. He hears all the talk about could he be turning down. You saw him reference that in that Pat McAfee interview. This is a guy who very much so still has a lot of his edge. And depending upon how he finishes up this season, I would not be surprised to see him make a strong run for MVP. But Patrick is just on I think I've run out of superlatives really to talk about his play at such a young age, and it's still at the infant levels as far as his career is concerned. But this young man is just different, man. He just is, and it's not hype. You're seeing him prove it week after week. And Stephen A., some of those numbers you pointed out as far as the number of 400-yard games and how consistently he is just putting up number after number after number with, I don't care what weapons he has. We're in for a treat for a long time because Andy Reid is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. Brett Veach, the general manager, is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future down there. This team is loaded, and they're going to be around for a long time. He's going to win a whole bunch of MVPs in Kansas City.
I agree. I think Patrick Mahomes, as I said, is the best player I've ever seen at the position. But I think he passed Aaron Rodgers for that distinction in my eyes. Guys, I've put my eyeballs on by a hair, by a very little bit. There's really nothing on the field Mahomes does that Rodgers can't do. I think Mahomes just has this kind of added sort of gunslinger thing that galvanizes the troops and all that. But guys, we're not asking for a prediction of who's going to win it this year. We're not talking about who's the best we've ever seen. We're talking about right now. And it is very tough to make the argument for anyone other than Rodgers when, given his weapons versus Mahomes' weapons, Rodgers has the higher QBR, the higher completion percentage, more touchdowns, and fewer interceptions. Very, very tough to make that argument. If they switched teams, do you think the Chiefs would be any worse?
No, you shouldn't be making the argument. You shouldn't be making the argument. Molly, see, this is when I get upset at you, Molly, because this man,
why?
How many years has this man, how many months, I shouldn't say years, how many months has Max Kellerman been sitting here when we make the argument about the embarrassment of weapons that Patrick Mahomes has compared to most everybody else? How many days, how many weeks, how many shows has Max sat up there and shot us down?
That's fair.
Because of the very reasons. He's now trying to give the MVP.
Hold on. Let me say something here. Max.
Molly.
Wait, hold on. Max, you nobody loves Patrick Mahomes more than you. And you say Patrick Mahomes should always win MVP. Stephen A's right. But Stephen A., you flipped too.
Okay,
I'm disappointed in you. What happened to that bad man?
This is what I'm saying,
You just
Molly.
jumped off the bandwagon. So both of you.
This is what I'm saying.
Disappointed in both of you.
Molly, this is what I'm saying. Stephen A. is getting on me he said that everyone else is pointing out the weapons. By the way, it wasn't that close when Mahomes was that's not the time for the argument when Mahomes got the best numbers across the board, right? I'm saying when it's close, when Rodgers has better numbers. Now you can point to not only does Rodgers have better numbers, but he doesn't have the weapons. Meantime, Stephen A. Smith When you
You're
hear
full
that
of it.
bad man, that's Stephen A. Smith talking about Aaron Rodgers. It's one of the
Time out.
famous phrases in
Time
American
out.
life right now. And
Okay,
his
okay.
guy
So
has
we
the
just
best
don't talk
numbers in the league,
with your
and he's
dribble,
arguing for
but
someone
I don't get a
else.
chance to respond to your nonsense. Lewis, I apologize that you have to be here to listen to this because you got better things to do with your time
I'm
than
here
listen to
for
his
it.
nonsense.
I'm here for
but
it,
just
though.
for clarification, just for clarification, Molly, I've never deviated from him being the bad man. What we're talking about is, as of right now, based on the performance thus far, it being nip and tuck. I'm the guy that always talks about Aaron Rodgers. This guy, not to say that he doesn't talk about Aaron Rodgers, because he does rave about Aaron Rodgers as well. I'm talking about the argument he's making. I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes over the last 6 weeks throwing over 300 yards, including a 400-yard game. I'm talking about the performance in the immediate moment. What Max did was then say, okay, yeah, this is what we're seeing. But look at all the riches that Patrick Mahomes has. Now, how many months, Molly, has he gotten on me when I said, wait a minute, Patrick Mahomes got Tyreek Hill,
Hold up.
Travis
Me
Kelce,
flipping,
and all of these boys.
You saying
you sat up there and said
there is no, that is not
you
close.
question whether Tyreek Hill was the best receiver in
to
football.
Mr. Aaron
You talked about
Rodgers.
Travis Kelce not being the best tight end in football. That was you. You did that.
Yeah, but by the way, Kittle's hurt, right? Like this year, Travis Kelce is. Look, you are Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has 39 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Has a higher completion percentage, and Patrick Mahomes is coming off a 3-interception game. So right now, at this moment, this is the time for you to come out and support your guy.
I got Q-tips, Lewis. I got Q-tips. I actually unclog my ears and listen. I'm not saying that your argument is wrong. I'm saying the very argument that you're using to make your point is what you've maligned everybody for using for years.
Mahomes.
That's my point.
Before, not only did Mahomes have more touchdowns, fewer interceptions, more yards, better touchdown-interception ratio, and a better one-loss record, he didn't have a 3-interception game.
That wasn't
coming
your
off
argument.
that game when Rodgers got the numbers.
All right. The two of you.
Yes, Stephen A. You
Enough.
start to bring this stuff
I apologize,
in.
Lewis.
The two of you.
That
We're
was
doing
not
a
your
duet.
argument.
You're both doing a duet like Fred
You
Astaire
all
today.
over the place.
Okay. Let me just say this really quickly because I want to get to your Steelers. Oh, my goodness. By the way, Lewis, I saw you're up for a few GM jobs. Very interesting. Rooting for you. Side note, I was watching Get Up earlier. All right, now let's get to the Steelers, guys. Stephen A., your team.